Hello, hello, and big welcome to a Tigerhall demo session. We're just going to give it a few seconds to let everyone come into the room, and then we're going to get going with a bit of background to Tigerhall, what it is that we do, and we'll also show you the platform. I'm Nellie Wartoft. I'm the founder and CEO of Tigerhall, and I'll be walking you through today. Why did we start Tigerhall, and what is it that we help our customers with, and also what does it look like in practice? So without further ado, let's dive in. So Tigerhall is a change activation platform. What that means is that we focus on the activation side of change and transformation. So when you're driving change and transformation, you would have the strategy usually done first. Why should we change? What do we need to transform? And so on. Then you plan, what do we need to do when? What needs to happen for the strategy to be realized? And then you get to this critical moment where that strategy and plan needs to be executed. So some people call this execution, some call it delivery, we call it activation, and like how do you activate your strategies and changes at scale? And when we say activation, we mean the triple C's, which are communications, capability building, and culture activation. So these are all designed around how do we get people to change their behavior, their mindset, do something different on Monday morning compared to what they did last week. How do we get people on board? How do we get them bought in and understanding why we're doing what we're doing and what needs to change, and also having the right capabilities, the skill sets, and the mindsets to actually make that change happen. And this is usually where a lot of transformation tends to fail, because people routinely underestimate the people side of change and how hard this is compared to strategy and planning many times. And it's tough to get this right. So this is what we help with. And the background to why this is tough to get right is that there is more and more change happening. And you would have all seen this, how it's more and more change happening at an exponential basis. If we look 10 years ago, there was 1 or 2 changes impacting every employee every year. And when that was the rate of change, around 75 to 80% of people were very supportive, happy to be on board. There's the new change of the year, let's do this. So it wasn't as hard at that point to drive change. 10 years later, however, we're seeing 15, 16 changes per employee per year. It's a massive increase in just the amount of change. And it's been an inverse relationship with the organizational support for those changes. So organizational support has dropped from that 75, 80% to now down to 30, 35%. So that leaves us with this activation gap, which means we need to drive more and more change, but it's harder and harder to get people on board. And we all know that if people aren't changing, then the change isn't happening. And this is why the way that we used to drive change in the past isn't really fit for purpose anymore. It used to be when it was 1 or 2 changes a year. Sure, you could do that email campaign or set up that SharePoint site and go talk in 10 town halls, or even do one-to-ones and focus groups with everyone. And you had time for that. It was okay to do that. People paid attention. It wasn't this fragmented, overwhelming, one-size-fits-none experience that we're seeing today. So the way that we've done this historically isn't really fit for purpose anymore. It's very overwhelming when you take that annual campaign and you X16, then that's going to be a very different experience. So for employees, I usually compare this to watching a Netflix show and you're seeing the second half of episode 8 before you see the first half of episode 2, and you have no idea who the characters are or what happened and what you should catch up on. And that makes it hard for them to make sense of it. And many change leaders know that this is not effective and it's not working, but it's very hard for them to do something different because it still relies on a lot of manual lift and shift. Very hard to get feedback, hard to get data, and it's really, really hard to scale these type of processes. So the question that Tigerhall answers is, how do we deliver more change much more effectively as that tiny, tiny team with very little resources? Most of the teams that we work with are 2, 3, 4, 5 people driving change for 20, 30, 40,000 people. So how can we do that when the ratio is literally 1 to 10,000? And the way that we think about this is change is always on. And with this exponential increase, there is no such thing anymore as ad hoc, project-based. Let's bring in a few consultants and they can just take care of it and run the project and then we're done. There is no such thing as done anymore. So we've built Tigerhall around always on change and treating it as the only constant, because change is the only constant, and building it in a way where it learns over time so that you don't have to start from scratch every single time you have a new change initiative. You can actually leverage the previous data, leverage what you've learned so far, and having a system that learns over time. And then automating a lot of these very manual processes around creating content, distributing content, email lists, and audience segmentation, collecting feedback, gathering data, all of the manual work in those processes goes away. So a lot of focus on automation and removing that busy work that takes time away from actually leading and driving the change. And then building it in a way that it builds your in-house change capability. So you don't have to rely on external consultants coming in over and over again. And it's always something new every time you start a new project. You can actually build this capability in-house, because you should get better and better. Every change initiative you start, you should get better and better and better over time. It shouldn't be a scenario where you have to start from scratch. So how does this work in practice? So the way the Tigerhall is set up, you start with creating content, relevant content for people in a way that they want to consume it. And this is made very easily. And I'll show how the Creator Studio works, where you can literally take a PowerPoint deck and it translates it to 33 languages as a podcast, as a video, as a power read, as a live stream, and people can consume it in any which way they like. So it's an easy way to create short, bite-sized, engaging, and modern content from those boring resources that nobody's really going to go and look at. Because today, very few people are excited to go into a SharePoint site and read a 100-page PowerPoint deck. So it takes those resources and translates it into a language and a format that people actually want to engage with, that drives comprehension and engagement. Then you take that content and you build out targeted change journeys so that people don't have this experience of the second half of episode 2 before the first half of episode 1, but you actually can see things in the right order. So having things happening in sequence, people know where to go. There's only one place, there's not this fragmentation, and they know where to find exactly what's for them. And then a very big part is the targeting. So a big part is audience segmentation. And when I say audience segmentation, it's both demographics. So think your HRIS, for example, and like where people sit and their seniority, like all of that standard data is there. But think also things like workflow or stage of the transformation or how people feel about the transformation. You can actually take the sentiment analysis in Tigerhall and feed that into the audience segmentation. So someone who just started workflow X and sits in finance in Mexico and is skeptical to the change, they get this type of messaging, whereas someone who is positive, sits in Thailand and has already done the entire workflow, they get a different kind of reinforcement. So that's coming back to this point of learning over time and leveraging data. So audience segmentation is across demographic, workflow, transformation stage, sentiment, and really any data points that you want to feed it. And then delivering this in a place where people are. So we have a very deep integration with Microsoft Teams. So people don't have to go to 2,000 different platforms to figure out what am I supposed to do in this change. It's right where they are on Microsoft Teams. And when they receive it, it's easy for them to give feedback. There is no such thing as surveys 90 days later or long things to fill out or like send an email to this email inbox over here. People can just give feedback right there, the way that they consume it. And this is similar to a social experience. So think comments, replies, emojis, reactions. It's much more natural engagement compared to, hey, can we take 15 minutes of your time and please fill out the survey? And this also means that you get the feedback instantly. So it's real time in the flow and you get the insights and the progress analytics. And this data is what tells the system over time how to do this better and better and better. So you actually get faster and faster for every initiative that you launch. And it learns the audiences, their preferences, how to produce the content, your cultural nuances, your language, and so on. So that's how the entire change activation loop works. So let's dive in and see what this looks like. So Tigerhall is accessible in 3 different formats. So you have the mobile app, which people can access on the go. You have a web app, which is accessible on a website. And then you also have Microsoft Teams. And these are all synced. So if you start listening to something on the phone when you're on the way to the office and then you open it in Microsoft Teams, it will all be synced between. And this also works with very diverse organizational audiences. So you can upload a PowerPoint deck once, And then someone who's on a retail shop floor, for example, they can choose to listen to it through the mobile phone, whereas maybe someone in the finance team wants to read it on Microsoft Teams. It's entirely up to them how they consume it, and you have full flexibility in how you reach people. So that's an introduction to the concept and how this works. Now let's take a look at what this actually looks like in practice. So right now, out of those three, I am currently in the web app. So the mobile app and the Microsoft Teams app and the web app, and this is the web app. And I'll show you the Microsoft Teams integration as well as part of this demo. So let's go through those items in that circle and see how do we do this at scale. So when you come in here on the web app, you have left-hand side here. This is the administration view. If you don't have administrator rights, you will see this view. And what is important to note here is that you will only see what you are impacted by. So there is no such thing as having employees go to a SharePoint site and having to sift through and like find what's relevant for them. They will only see what's relevant for them. So you have a lot of controls over access rights, over permissions, and who sees what content and when and things like that. So people only see what are all the initiatives that they are impacted by. So they would have a view here. So these are the different initiatives. You set this up here through the topics. So these are used as sometimes smaller initiatives, sometimes large transformations, depending on how yours is structured. And then you have the active actions here that they have to take. So anyone who lands here knows exactly what am I impacted by right now and what do I need to do. And that's many times all they want to know is that. And here you have a few different areas. So you have the creation where you create these initiatives, you create content. You can also upload content that you have yourself, create the journeys, what we call trails. And then down here, we see the targeting, so the stakeholder groups, and then the reporting as well. So if we look at first, how do we easily create content? If you're not uploading it, let's look at Creator Studio and how you can easily create these assets quickly. So you can create a video or a podcast. Let's create a podcast for the purpose of this demo. And let's upload a document that looks similar to many others. So if we take a look at this, this is a PDF, it's 18 pages, it's a mix of graphs, different text, different information. In this case, it's about employee experience for a Workday implementation. So the chances of someone taking this document and actually reading through all of it and internalizing it is very low. So instead of doing that and sending everyone to this document, we upload it here. We add a prompt. The prompt, you might want to like summarize the key points for our HR leaders, let's say. So you tell it exactly what you want it to do in this podcast from this document, and then you select here, who are the personas? So this is what you would tie to your stakeholder groups. Now this is set up as expert, intermediate, beginner, but this could also be your finance team or your C-level or your change champions. So it learns the personas and the audiences here. So now we've set up expert and beginner. Then what we do is we press next. It will upload this, it will extract the text and generate a transcript. This entire process takes anywhere between 30 seconds to 90 seconds, which is quick when you do it, but longer when you're live. So I've gone ahead and prepared the next step here. So same document, my prompt was summarize the key points in this document for our HR leaders, similar to the one I wrote now. And this is the first draft of what came out.
Welcome to our podcast where we discuss the evolving landscape of employee experience in the modern workplace. Today, we're diving into a fascinating blueprint for CIOs and technology leaders based on Workday's comprehensive research. I'm joined by my colleague who has spent years studying workplace transformation.
Thanks for having me. This is such a critical topic, especially since the pandemic completely transformed how we work.
So that's how the podcast comes out from uploading that document. You can also select your voices. So you have a couple of options here.
Hi, my name is Rebecca, and I'm one of the voices you can use in the Studio Creator.
Hi, my name is Stefan, and I'm one of the voices you can use in the Studio Creator.
And there are other options you can select from. And we also support voice cloning. So if you have an executive that you want to put out podcasts in their voice or just your own voice, if you don't want to waste your time recording, you can clone your voice and add it in here too. And we've built this entirely for control because we know that it's important to be able to edit what comes out. And in many AI tools, it's you put something in and then you have no idea what it creates on the other side. This is the opposite of that. So you actually get full transcript, full view here, what they're saying. So if you want to change a word and go in here and say like, welcome to our Tiger podcast, for example, then you can save that change and then generate the audio again. And now it picks up that word instead. So it's easier for you to edit the transcript. You can also go down here, tell the transcript what you want it to do. For example, make it funnier or give it a Texan accent or anything that you want to change. And then it revises the entire transcript.
Welcome to our Tiger podcast, where we discuss the evolving landscape of.
So that's how it works. So easy to create podcast very quickly and just publish it. And then you can build this together into trails. So you can drag and drop different content pieces into these journeys to create exactly what is it that you want people to see. So if we go into the Workday implementation as an example, then here you have the content you created. Easy to create these different journeys if you want people to consume things in different orders, and then just drag and drop here and you have that journey. And then what you want to do is you want to target this to specific groups of people at different times. So if we look at the stakeholder groups, there are two ways you can create different audiences to target. So you have the standard group, which is pretty much take the audience that you know, like if you have change champions or an executive leadership team, for example, you just drag and drop them into a group. The more effective way at scale is to use the dynamic groups. So when you create dynamic groups, this is where you pull in any data that you have. So if you have access to a data lake, for example, great. If you don't, that also works. So the most common implementation here is the HRS, and that takes about 10 to 15 minutes to integrate with the right authorization. You can also integrate with ERP, CRM systems, Microsoft Graph, and even if you have an Excel sheet of like who likes chocolate, who likes mango, you can also connect that here. And the way that you build these groups out is you start with selecting the conditions. So could be as simple as country. So let's say we're looking at people in Austria, for example, take Australia, and maybe you want people who report into a certain person. So let's say we are looking at managers. We want people to report into Charles and who are 4 levels below Charles, let's say. So you can select that reporting line, department name, same thing. Maybe you want people in operations. And then you can also add in, say, Workday workflow. So if this is a Workday implementation, you can select that the Workday workflow should be starting with the performance management module, for example. So now what we've built here is an audience that are people in Australia who report up to Charles Davis in the operations teams and who have started the performance management module in Workday. So the moment someone matches this audience criteria, the conditions, the training, the enablement, the communications will automatically be triggered to them. So let's say I start reporting to Charles or I move to Australia, I will get all of that enablement and communications, or when I say start the performance management module. So this is very helpful if you're doing a technology implementation, for example. Instead of having everything happening in January and you have all the training happening then, you can actually see that, oh, now Nellie is starting the performance management module, and then that is automatically triggered to me. So you can also operate the same with sentiment. So let's say you want to add in sentiment, if we take it as simple as a positive, you can add that in, and then that means that when someone trickles over the line and becomes positive from a sentiment point of view, that's when this certain messaging will be triggered. So you can set this up in any which way you like, and then when people meet these conditions, they automatically get the communications enablement triggered. And it can just be as simple, maybe you just want this one, for example, maybe just everyone that starts the performance management module in Workday, get this trail on how we do exactly that. And when I say triggered, this is delivered to the end user. And many of our customers have the Microsoft Teams integration, which means that this gets delivered to them directly within the Teams environment. So now I'm an end user, now I'm an employee. And what I get here is directly within the Tigerhall DM chatbot, I get a notification. So I now see that I have a new action to take. I need to view this key update in our transformation initiative. It's a message from our CEO. and I get it here together with all my chats with my manager, my teams, and everyone else. So I can press view this, and then it takes me directly to that piece. So I can just watch it directly within Teams.
With ambiguity is going to be important for the team. And finally, the environment. Now, the environment is going to be based somewhat on your.
I can turn subtitles on and off. I can change the subtitles. Maybe I want this in Danish.
Company culture. I mean, you're marinating in that every day, and there are parts of that you may be stuck with. But let's talk just a little bit.
And this also goes for things that you upload. So if you upload a video, for example, of a town hall, this is the way that people get subtitles as well. And then you have comments here. So people can comment on it. You can ask any follow-up questions. People can react and reply. So this is an easy way for people to share their thoughts and share their opinion. And this all goes into your sentiment analysis and your reporting. So you can see at the specific initiative, what are people's questions? What are their concerns? What are they saying? And it's based on this comment section here. So that's where people get it directly within their direct messaging. It's also very popular to integrate it with the channels. So take a channel tab. Let's say we have the Daily Operations Region West, for example. Let's say this is a channel. And this is where you have all your daily communication, operating like a normal Microsoft Teams channel. What you can do is you can add on Tigerhall topics up here. And this is easy to do. It means that you add Tigerhall, then here you can select those initiatives. So let's say we have the AI journey that is impacting the Daily Operations Region West, and maybe also Project Synergy. So let's say they're impacted by these two changes, these two initiatives that you're working on. You can set that up here, and you get this tab where they get all of the content and relevant details around those initiatives that they can access directly here. And then you can change the name of this. So maybe you want to call this, let's say, Transformation Resources, or anything that you like. So now this means that I'm part of this channel and I have easy access to my topics and all the resources and the content that I need right here. And anytime something new is published within these initiatives, so let's say there's a change updated, or like you're pushing out something relating to a specific change, and that's tagged to this channel, then people can just view it right here as well. So again, no need to go anywhere else. You get to them exactly where they are, where they work, and it gets into those team channels and the spaces where they operate in their BAU. So easy to watch this here. People can rate, discuss it, and easy to consume it. Now let's take a look at a few of the different formats as well. So we have, for example, here. So this is a podcast. So we looked at what the video looks like. This is a podcast where people can choose, do they want to read it or do they want to listen to it? So if I press listen.
Electronics have take-back programs already because they recognize that there's value in that material. From the business perspective, I think there's also the government regulation.
So that could be one of the podcasts that we had created in Creator Studio, for example. People can choose their playback speed, and the same thing here. Instantly, they can just change the transcript and the language and turn on the transcript too. So this is where they can then view, if they want to read it instead of listening to it, they can do that, and they can change the language to anything that they like. So people always have the option to choose how do they consume it and how do they prefer to receive the information. And then you also have it here in the activity tab. So it integrates directly in activity. So if you have an action that you need to take, then it comes up here. So now I have an assignment due, for example. You might have different best practices, new workflows to help you speed up operations. So this is where you can then see, okay, now I have an assignment. This is a podcast and I should start this. So I'm 6% completed, and you get invited here directly within the activity tab. So this is effective to do reinforcement, reminders, making sure that people are up to speed with what they need to know by a certain date. So let's say you have a milestone on 1st of May and you set that in the assignment, in the action that people need to take, that you want everyone to do this before 1st of May. Then they will be automatically reminded throughout that time period, if they haven't completed already, to say that, hey, you have this, then it's due soon, so you should complete this now. So all of the reinforcement and the reminders goes completely out. So you don't have to spend manual time on that. And this is what a trail looks like. So if you have this journey, this is 59 minutes. This is the way that it comes up. So it's a 29-minute video to start with. Then you have a 6-minute podcast, 6-minute video, and different formats in here as well. And when people start playing this, then they also have it here as a
Which
view.
took 9 months.
So they would have it as a view here, as a playlist. They can consume this trail and then go on to another podcast. So everything is deeply integrated here within Activity. The last piece on the Teams integration is that you also have access to the entire app within Teams. So, and this is for administrators as well. So everything that we just did around content creation, targeting different stakeholder groups, assigning them different actions they have to take, all of that you can do from the Teams integration as well. And that includes analytics and reporting. So lastly, let's take a look at the different statistics that you can get. So you have the statistics page, which is where you have a quick overview and a snapshot of everything like high level. And you can sort these based on the different audience groups as well, the stakeholder groups. So maybe you want to see what your India managers have done last month, for example. Then you set that, and then you get the data based on your criteria up here. So you have things like how much time they've spent, the content they've consumed, like basic usage metrics, you have leaderboards. This is very useful where you can see who are they influenced by. So you can see that, oh, they really enjoy listening to Dutta, for example. It might be one of your change champions or one of your leaders, and they might enjoy consuming culture transformation success stories. So then you can put 2 and 2 together and say that, okay, we should actually do some more culture transformation success stories delivered by Dutta or Eliza or Nir, for example, because that's what would resonate with the India managers in this case. So you can see what they're drawn to and what they naturally consume on their own. And then you have the popular pieces here as well, what they are most interested in. And then from an action point of view, you see here how many have given it a thumbs up, how many have started, how many have completed. So you can see exactly where they're at in that journey. And you have that both at an assignment level, but then also at a group level. So you can compare and contrast different groups and where they're at. If you want to compare your change champions with your operations or Asia managers, for example, and even at an individual user level. So if you want to go in and see where is this particular person at in their journey, you can see the difference between Amanda, Anthony, and Ashley here as well. So this is where you get a quick overview. Then the second way to get data is through the report builder. So this is where you can go very granular and go into much more detail on exactly different data and slice and dice it in any which way you like. So a few different templates here that you can select from. Let's say we want feedback on a certain initiative. Then the user comments is likely the most valuable template from a report perspective. So you select that. And then you select when do you want the feedback? Maybe you want to see what did people last month think of what particular area. So let's take the SOP. So maybe the SOP best practices. We put out a best practice guide around how to do this particular part of the change. So we want to know in March, what were people's feedback on the best practices that we put out? And then we also want to know who's the audience that we want this feedback from. So maybe you just want to know what the American managers are thinking about this. You don't really care about all users or like anyone else or the change champions. You just want to know what are my American managers thinking about the SOP best practices and what was their feedback in March. So then you select their audience and you select the criteria, and then you can also edit the report. So maybe you don't care about their Tigerhall user ID or the location. Maybe you just want to see what the comments were, for example. So you select the table columns, and then you can review and export the report as well. And everything in statistics, everything in Report Builder is exportable, and it's also an open API. So you can just connect this if you want the data in another system. If you have a data lake or a Power BI or any setup that you want to centralize it in, you can do that too. The way that you export this, then you receive it in a format that looks like this. So this is where you will then see the different users and what was their comment. So you can see what questions did people have, what happens if a supplier doesn't meet the sustainability criteria, for example, or there's an emphasis on sustainability and reducing cost, but how do we balance this with a potential increase in operational complexity? So you can see exactly here, what are people saying, what is their feedback? So it's a very easy and fast way to gather all the feedback and then visualizing this as a sentiment analysis and report as well. So that's a quick overview of the key features and how this works. There are other areas to it as well, and always happy to go through in more detail with any of you one-to-one. Are there any questions in the chat that I can help answer from my colleagues? Let me see. Is all the information entered in the system kept confidential prior day? Yeah, entirely. Thank you for answering, Team Tigerhall. Reactions are summarized, engagement statistics, yeah. And data determines the influences, yeah, consumption by the users. Perfect. Team has already responded to everything. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for tuning in for these 30 minutes. Really appreciate it to give you a quick overview and insight into what Tigerhall does and how it works. If you want to learn more, feel free to reach out. My email address is nellie@tigerhall.com, and you can also learn more on our website and request a full demo there that is more personalized to exactly the change that you're going through. So appreciate your time and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.